How many of you have heard of the Institute for Futures Research? Okay. It's a well-kept secret, and that is something that we've been trying to resolve over the last couple of years. So let me just give you a bit of context, and then I'll talk to you about the present. I'll share with you the theme in terms of connecting the dots. The IFR was born out of something that happened in 1968. And looking at a number of the people in the room, you have no idea what was happening in 1968. But there might be a few. Tim, I'm afraid you qualify with your grey hair. So in 1968, a group of people pushed by two gentlemen, a gentleman by the name of Emilio Pecci and Alexander King, an Italian and a Scotsman, were incredibly concerned about the future of mankind. The 60s had seen the assassination of JFK. More importantly, Martin Luther King. We had a number of countries detonating nuclear weapons in tests. There were wars, there was the Bay of Pigs, there was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and everyone was looking at this saying, maybe this is actually the end. The two men that I mentioned approached a very wealthy gentleman by the name of Rockefeller and said, would you provide the funding for us to get the leading minds in the world from business, science, academia, politics together for a meeting where we can start addressing this problem, because we see the end of the world looming, the end of mankind. Rockefeller obliged, and he put the money up for this meeting at the Club of Rome to happen in 1968. A number of South African people were asked to attend. One was Dr. Anton Rupert, who was heading up the Rupert's International. He was not able to attend, but he sent two of his top execs. And they came back and they shared with him the doomsday feeling that had transpired. It was going to be the end of the world. Mankind was really messing this place up, which we are. And we've actually made it a hell of a lot worse. But at that stage, it was just a really bleak picture of what was, what could happen. Dr. Rupert didn't believe in the outcomes they were predicting. But what he was fascinated by was the way they went about discussing the problem, because it was a radically new form of thinking. And he said this kind of thinking is required in South Africa. For us to leave the apartheid thinking, etc., we need to start having a means where we can show people an alternative way of thinking. And he provided the capital for the IFR to be born, which was funded and started in 1974. And the basis is still the same today. We look at doing lots and lots of research, but the main driver is sharing with companies, with organizations, with their people, the importance of thinking. Okay. Many people believe that you can't see into the future, you cannot predict the future. We are not in the game of prediction by any stretch of imagination, but we are very firm believers that you can create your own future. The interesting thing is, individuals, we're actually quite good at it. As corporations, we're very poor. As an individual, from quite early on, you start thinking about what am I going to do after primary school, then high school, career, and you start mapping it out. So the question's really been bugging me for some time. Why are we so good at it, or potentially good at it as individuals, yet when it starts coming to an organization, we actually don't do this particularly well? I believe there are a number of reasons. The first is, it's not only mine, it's someone else's, and they might have come up with the idea, so I might not have bought into this thing totally. I might not even respect the people that are doing it, etc., and thinking about it. But one of the key things that's researched, and we can debate it long and hard, is our thinking is linear. We are grown up in a linear thinking mode. We think in 1 year blocks, in 3 month blocks, in 90 days. Am I going to hit those numbers? So our thinking is linear. And it's been linear right throughout school, university, tertiary, whatever you've done afterwards. And the linear thinking is, I start here, I want to get there, I just go in one straight line. Now, when things aren't changing, it's actually not a bad methodology. When things are changing as rapidly as they are, there's some major problems. The one being, what normally happens is, organizations look at the past, They make the decisions in the present for a time yet to come. The assumption is the past is going to reproduce itself. We know that's not going to happen. So how do you then start being able to look forward? It's a process, and there are skills and tools that can be shared that people can learn and organizations can learn how to do it. And that's what I talk about, connecting the dots. The problem with the dots is we're just so inundated with information. What's good dots? What's bad dots? What's good information? You know, we're always hearing these debates around fake news. Are we looking in the right places? And that's a key thing that we try and teach our clients and organizations is start understanding what a process is to start looking into the future. Now the interesting thing is the majority of our clients, well, nearly all our clients at the moment are very, very large organizations. The information that we give them is invariably kept with the people that pay for it, which is normally CEO, CFO, COO, chairman. Now, with no disrespect to that group of leadership, they are not the people that are going to connect the dots. The connecting of the dots does not happen up there. And when I talk to them, I have to say that very quietly and very gently, because normally they're white males, and we know a male has a very, 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 very fragile ego, and there's normally large amounts of testosterone. So the resistance is, oh, we make all the decisions. That's probably why I'm in some of the trouble we're in right now. So the important thing is, you've got to start sharing that information, push it down into the organization, where people can start looking at it, and it becomes a part of your DNA. Organizations create their own culture. They build a DNA. So if you're in an organization that manages costs very carefully, that thread comes through all your meetings. Does the thread in that organization of looking at the future and looking at the opportunities come through in meetings? Invariably no. They're operational. Let's discuss now, where are we? Where do we need to be? Okay, how are we going to fix this? So our view is, again, totally linear. We're in a temporal mindset around time, and it's in a straight line. What we start talking about is saying, you need to explore the 4 Ps. What's possible? What's probable? What's plausible? And what's preferable? And they're 4 totally different conversations. And when you start having those, dots start to form. And they start to congregate, and you'll see them moving. Stuff will happen. We're constantly seeing a reproduction in this space. People are asking for new technology. And when you start seeing it, and you see it at multiple levels of an organization, you start talking about it. And what you invariably pick up is 2 things: opportunity, risk. So the opportunity we want to take advantage of, if it's part of what our business strategy is and where we want to make money and make a difference. Risk is, let's avoid it. How do we do it? The ones that can see the opportunity first and see the risk earlier than anyone else invariably gets a leg up on their opposition, on their competition. So how do you do it? Okay. We look at 6 themes that are absolutely vitally important in our belief on how you start developing the skills around developing a future view and developing what we call foresight. The 6 themes we look at are technology, sustainability, security, innovation, the art and science of decision making, and the new world of business. Now, if you're watching those, and you're watching them on a regular basis, and you're having discussions on a weekly basis with your team, in your division, in your organization, in your unit, you'll invariably start seeing an increased level of 1, participation, but 2, people starting to say, okay, we're not only just looking now at the end of June, what are our figures, end of July, our end of our quarter. You start getting a different feeling happening in the organization. And that's where the conversation starts. When you have that conversation, Next step is invariably you start having innovative ideas. There's nothing more frustrating for us working with organizations that saying, we're going to plan an innovation day. Why don't you go and play golf for the day, entertain your clients, and put down a budget for an exceptionally large barbell, because you're going to get more benefit out of that. And you don't switch on innovation. You don't switch on creativity. It's something that has to be continually touched on, like the management of costs. It becomes a part of you. So if I can ask the question of the group, how many of you, after the age of 10 or 11, participated in subjects at school, prep school, high school, varsity, tertiary, technicon, etc., that was focused in the arts, music, dance, art? How many of you? 3, 4. All our hands should be up. To use the right side of our brain. Why not? Because our education system doesn't want you to do it. Because our education system is based on a system that was designed 200 years ago. So when you go to work now, what are you often asked to do? Solve problems. Can you help solve these? We've got a major challenge in this place. All your training's been done for something else. It's a memory test. You have to start thinking differently. Now, we're not saying throw out the old root cause analysis thinking. What we are saying is you've got to combine a lot of it. So we talk about systems thinking, design thinking, creative thinking. And when you start having those discussions, you invariably have a far richer discussion and you see things happening far quicker. And you keep record, and it's done on a regular basis. An example would be we send out reports on those 6 themes that I spoke about to our clients on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, and an annual basis. What we don't want is that to sit with the C-suite. Push it down into units. So if this was a unit and I was the head of the unit, I would be sending you that report for our meeting on Monday. And I'd say, guys, here's the agendas for Monday's meeting, but please see this last attachment. I want you guys to read it. It's most probably 4 or 5 pages. And we're going to have a discussion around that. And I'm going to build in 40 to 45 minutes at the end of the meeting to discuss that. What I'm going to do is ask and say, guys, what did you see in there? There was a piece around technology. Could it be something that we need to be aware of in our organization? And I start the debate. My role as the executive is to then keep quiet. Now that is normally a very, very hard thing for them to do. But while they're talking, they can learn nothing. And ideas don't happen up there, they happen here. So get the conversation flowing. And invariably what you find after a while, people start participating more and more. And that, when are we going to get the next update? We start having a far different discussion. Invariably, the difference between lots of companies in a competitive space, we've gone past the days where your product is just so much better than the competitors. Most of the products out of there are really competitive. It boils down to how do you think about it and how do you solve the problems, how do you engage with your client. Most of the stuff that needs to happen up here. But that's quite often the time we spend the least amount of stuff on. If we seem to be busy, fantastic. So connecting the dots. We look at where's the money going? Where's the power shifting? Where are people moving to? What is the media saying? And when you start watching lots and lots of things happening, and you're tracking it on a regular basis, you will start to see a consistent pattern. A very, very important thing happened for me personally on the 30th of March last year. That is all around connecting the dots. Do you remember what happened on the evening of the 30th of March 2017? Robin Gordon was fired, along with his deputy minister, Jones. And the next day they gave a speech about start connecting the dots, people. Now, I remember reading about the Gupta wedding and the possibility that there was some skullduggery happening there. Then you look at something about a newspaper and they've got a bit of a TV channel and these things. And from 2010 onwards, there were lots of dots, but they were dots all over the place. And it was only after listening to him talk that I start seeing the dots come to, we've got a major problem. Another example of the kinds of the thinking where we can't assimilate all the information on our own is think about the pollution and the state the world's in. You read about climate change, CO2 emissions, the ecosystem falling over, water pollution, air pollution, cutting down of trees. But it's the cutting down of the trees, it's water pollution, all of this stuff. And if you look at it in isolation, you say, hey, it's a bit of a problem. But when you start seeing it, it's a massive problem. And the estimation is we've got about 50 years to get this right and rectify it. Otherwise, we are going to leave absolutely nothing for our grandchildren. It will be gone. Okay. And it's all around the thinking. So what we work with our clients is to say, how do you get your people to start looking at those 6 themes? And then not only using our information, but then they go to their sources in their industry and their subject matter experts. And you start having a better level of discussion. What invariably happens then is you get skilled people within your organization that are able to see patterns for them. When you can connect the dots, you see the pictures a lot earlier than other people. We're not good at piecing it all together on our own. Put yourself in a group, you become far more astute, far more aware. And what it does is it stimulates conversation, which we also believe is a major problem that's not happening enough in organizations. Steve Jobs got a lovely phrase. At Apple, we hire the best people, and then we let them tell us what to do. Most organizations go after the best people, and then they tell them what to do. If you're going to follow that policy, get the dwarfest person and just follow a process. Because now you pay them absolutely nothing, and your profits go through the roof. Why? Because you're not paying them that. But what do we do? No, I'm going to hire the best, the brightest, the best young brains coming out of these MBAs, and then I'm going to say, right, you follow a process. It's counterintuitive. It's like military intelligence. Okay. You've got to be thinking about this stuff differently. And the change is going to happen faster. So people that can start seeing the dots and knowing where to look and piecing the puzzle together earlier have a major jump on their clients, on their competition. Questions?
The most obvious question is, where do you start? If you've got an organization, a corporate, who's so set in their ways, how do you break the ice? How do you get in there?
Normally with a sledgehammer. It pretty much is in a certain way where you start finding 1 or 2 people that are open to the kind of thinking. And you get them to expose their teams. And you start sending them pieces of information, and then we go in and we help. And we sit down and we coach people through it and say, guys, this is how you do it. The problem with the set in the ways is invariably those are very successful organizations and they have a track record of success. But again, it goes back to that point earlier, the past, the present, the future. They're making the assumption that because of my success in the past, I'm going to be successful in the future. Those days, there were days when that was possible. But because the world is moving so quickly and the technology is happening at such a pace, that methodology is not going to work. So it's working with those people's minds to say there are other ways. And how do we do it? And expose them to the thinking. So in an organization like that, I would actually work with someone to say, find the people that will be receptive. Don't give me the hardest nut to crack, because let's get that person, because if that person influences a couple more, and the hard nut suddenly says, geez, they're doing it, and look at the results they're achieving. That's going to be far more persuasive of an outcome than me banging on that nut and hitting it, not going to work.
Are you involved in private corporations? Don't you think you should get involved with government?
Absolutely. Okay, so we do a lot of government work. We work with a number of government entities, and we're actually developing some tools that are assisting private enterprise and government entities in terms of assessing how future ready they are. And we had on last week Friday, we had our final assessment on the tool with a number of subject matter experts, and that product's going to be going to market shortly, where people within an organization and outside can assess that organization based on a number of criteria which are not financial. Because we know what can happen with the finances. Okay, so you can take Steinhoff, you can take a number of examples, you can fudge the numbers. You've got to be thinking bigger picture. As well as one of the key things we're seeing is how sustainable is a business. So if you had a look at Steinhoff's figures during the course of May, June, July, August last year, it looked like a very sustainable business, the way he was reporting. If you look at some of the other dimensions we're adding, it's going to be far more difficult for those things to be fudged. So yes, we are working with government, and there's some areas that are very receptive, and some that work very well. Others, in terms of government, that are a little more challenging. I hope I was diplomatic. Yeah.
Just a last question. Disruptive technologies, AI, your Elon Musk, whatever the guy is doing and so on. That's happening out there, beyond our shores. What do you see for South Africa as far as those technologies are concerned?
Okay, so I think you've got to, there are two things. The stuff that happens in a Silicon Valley context, where you've got so much happening, that's all that's happening in that space. There's some unbelievable stuff happening. But is it the real world? Is it our world here? No, it's not. And their market is so much more mature and accepting of that kind of technology, etc. There's a lot of stuff happening here in South Africa that is phenomenal. The problem is it's good news, and good news is not nearly as well received as bad news, and it doesn't sell nearly as well. I think there's another question you're not asking me. Is there a threat of AI? There will be, no question. Because if you have a look at what our labor costs are, over the last 10 years, our labor has increased at 5% per annum. Okay. And our productivity has really not increased since the mid-1990s. Even for a standard grade maths student at King Edwards, I can work out we've got a problem. Okay. The challenge is, how do you address that? If I'm going to be investing large sums of money, am I going to do it in a labor-intensive environment? Chances are not. I'm going to do it in a space where I can use technology. The interesting thing is a couple of our clients who are very big into the artificial intelligence space have seen over the 10 odd years that they've been investigating and investing in that process, they've still seen an increase in the number of people in that organization because they get pulled into other areas. So where you get the AI taking over, the human being goes and moves somewhere else. So they've seen a net increase. That's very, very interesting. I don't think you're going to have that phenomenon moving into the next 20, 30 years. Are we going to be 2-3 years, everything automated? Not in South Africa, no. But it's going to happen eventually. So how do we adjust to that? How are we making, we need to be working with government. In the past, we've only got three players in the market. It's normally government, it's normally business and labor. We don't believe that triumvirate has proved very successful. You need to add other parties to the mix. And there's a lot of distrust between those three. Our feeling is you've got to pull in academia and you've got to pull in citizens so that we start developing stuff and creating opportunities that are relevant for the South African market. Our market's unique, and so is certain South American. Provide a system that's going to stimulate growth, but that's also going to create job opportunities. Does that mean all of our youth are going to go to university? No. Should that be the end point? No. But we have it in our minds, Peace must fall, etc. Why? Plumbers, electricians, builders, engineers, technicons. There's many different ways to go. But there needs to be thought put into it. How am I doing for time then? Any other questions?
Just a question. The scenario planning that was typically done by Ken Santa and Co. Did they use these sorts of themes in planning that? Are you aware of it?
The thinking methodology.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, if you look at Clem Santa's High Road, Low Road, which is the one he's the most famous for, there are definitely pieces of the possible, plausible, preferable in there. And yes, and that's a huge part of what we do as well, is because when we start saying to people, what's your possible, what's the plausible, we're actually doing scenario planning. The important thing is we're not doing it for them, we're doing it with them. And they can say, okay, wow, that is something we really want to go for. Because when it's theirs and they want to go for it, there's energy, there's passion, there's momentum, there's ownership.
Yeah, that's right, because I think what tends to happen is that we've had this scenario planning, we've had the books, people have bought them, but they don't own it. So it's a case of, well, somebody out there is going to make us go the high road or the low road. But I think we're all involved, and I think, to the point, as citizens, we need to give each of us have got value to add. So I think the bottom line is involving the common man in that way in these plans.
Okay. Thanks very much.